Bobby Manning here. Welcome to Dome Theory, fresh new edition to end the week here, and it's a good time to do it. I like honing in on one team, one matchup when we can, and this was certainly a game to do it here between the Celtics and Grizzlies on Thursday. We have Damichael Cole with us here from Memphis's Commercial Appeal, and the new co-host of Locked On Grizzlies. Congratulations, my man.
I appreciate that. Appreciate that, Bobby. Good to be here, man. Good to join you.
Well, I've been interested in the Grizzlies all year because it's interesting. This is the first time these two teams met. You only get those two meetings between East and West teams every year, and something's been going on in Memphis. Everybody's talking about it. They would be the one seed if they were in the East. You obviously see the
Yep.
records down there, and they've just been dominant. And I remember I do like an NBA column at Boston Sports Journal every week, and I'd be looking at all the different rankings. And their defense was terrible to start the year. They were way down in last place for certain weeks, and then all of a sudden it flipped right around the new year there, where they were one of the best defenses in the NBA, and that's something I've never really seen before. So these two teams that since the new year, I think, had about 20 wins each,
hmm
both rising up their conferences, both playing amazing basketball around, one star, two in Boston's case, but only one on Thursday. This was a critical meeting for both these teams here, and Boston kind of came out and made a statement against Memphis there, and Ja Morant, who was just on this 40-point per game tear for a couple games there, and he did it again, even
Yeah,
in a
right.
loss.
He closed in. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Man, it was a fun game. I think it was interesting. From the Memphis perspective, you felt like Boston would be the test that they needed in terms of, Boston getting Derek White. I mean, you see it every game now, but we saw it in the West. Derek White is a pest defensively. He gets into you. He takes you out of your offense, whatever you want to run, and he's tough. And Marcus Smart is a guy who's also regarded in that way. And then I don't know if on a national level, if Jayson Tatum.
Oh, did we lose the Michael there? Oh, there he goes. All right, I think we got him back here. We'll pull him back in.
We good to go?
Yeah, looks like we lost you for a sec there.
Okay, okay. But yeah, so with the Grizzlies, I was just saying that this was the ultimate test in terms of, for Ja Morant, for them. The Grizzlies are number one fast break team, in NBA, number one in paint scoring. You just knew Boston would kind of suck them into playing, more to their weaknesses, but how would that work out? And the first thing we saw from the jump, I mean, you saw it, Bobby, they were sagging off of Morant, going under screens, sagging off of a lot of the shooters, and it really changed the way that the Grizzlies played. They played that game a little bit differently than some past games. So it was an interesting test. I feel like it was one of those good playoff preview type games.
Felt like a playoff game. The
Yeah.
Garden was packed. You felt the gas. There's a pretty loud applause in the pregame intros there for Ja
Yep.
Morant, which isn't usual in Boston unless you get some sort of Celtics connection. Obviously, he's a guy whose prominence is going up like every single day around this league. It was
Yeah.
a perfect entry into Boston after the dunk on Jakob Poeltl. I know you mentioned Derek White there was talking about it. And he was like, that was nasty on his former teammate there in
Yeah.
San Antonio. So this guy, it's so interesting. I'm looking back at 2019, last couple of years of the Grizzlies, and just how quickly it turned around for them. Damichael, obviously a Memphis native, for those of you who don't know him. That Mike Conley, Marc Gasol era, the way it transitioned so fast into what they're doing now with Ja Morant. And I'm looking back at that 2019 year, and that was actually the year that the Celtics had Memphis's pick. I believe it was from the Jeff Green trade. Memphis
Mhm.
had like a 6% chance in the lottery. There was a new odds, everything even at the top there. And they had a 6% chance to get up to that spot where they picked Ja Morant. They ended up getting up there, grabbing him, and it's really been like a 1, maybe 2 year transition into what they're doing now here, which is just insane. And it's mostly been about him. I know they've gotten other good pieces in there. They have a good coach in Taylor Jenkins who's put it all together pretty fast here, but it's amazing to me, and I kind of want your perspective on it and just how quickly it's happened for this group with him at the center of it. What's he, 22 now?
22. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy. I mean, but you in Boston, you kind of have the idea of how this works because Boston they hit on guys like Marcus Smart, and then a couple years went by, and then you got Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and those guys, Terry Rozier, they really hit on some picks in their own right that were core pieces to putting this team together, and just the foundation they've had the past few years. And it's similar with the Grizzlies, but no one saw it happening this fast. But it's consistent. They're consistently going upward, and it's like they're doing what you expect most young teams to do, but they're just doing it at an accelerated pace. For example, Ja Morant's rookie year was the bubble year, and
Hmm.
Ja. Those guys were the 8th seed when everything shut down comfortably. I believe they had a cushion there, but when the bubble play came, Jaren Jackson was hurt. They lost some games. They lost that seed. Remember in the play-in to Portland when Damian Lillard just went.
Oh yeah, and a great
he
game.
just he just went in fuego like in that whole bubble run. But yeah, so that was that year. And then the next year they made the playoffs, played the Jazz, one game, one. Ja Morant, had a 40+ point game. And the Jazz won the rest of the games. But this year was the year you were wondering, okay, are they still going to stagger out in that 6, 7, 8 range, or could they take a jump? And then they started 9 and 10. It was like, okay, they're gonna be fighting for a playoff spot, play in that area. And Ja Morant got hurt. When Ja Morant got hurt, you saw so many players, and like I said, you with the Celtics, I think you see it a lot with guys like Peyton Pritchard and maybe like a guy like Romeo Langford when he was here. When you give those younger guys, more playing time, and they start to do more things than they're usually doing, when they're just usually spotting up, playing defense, staying out of the way of the star guys. When Ja got hurt, Desmond Bane had to become basically a 20-point per game scorer. Jaren Jackson had to create a lot of his own offense. Tyus Jones had to become more aggressive as a scorer than he had been at any point in the season, and so forth. And then when Ja got back, those guys kept that same aggressiveness. And that was the difference, because a lot of people were saying, oh, they were winning without Ja Morant. Yes, that was the case. And that's a credit to Taylor Jenkins as well in the defense and all those things. But the biggest key, I think, was young guys got confidence. Young guys started to play in bigger roles. And now when Ja got back, Desmond Bane was still, taking those same shots with the same confidence. Tyus Jones, when he came in the game off the bench, was still taking those same shots with that same confidence. And it just became a well-oiled machine. They've turned into one of the best benches in the NBA. They have a clear identity in terms of they like to get out and transition. They like to score in the paint. They like to run. They like to create havocs. Defensively, they're top in the league, steals, blocks. They're near the top in loose balls recovered. That is their brand of play, and they formed that identity. And now, they're just getting better and better at it. But yeah, it's a young team gaining confidence.
For sure, and it reflects that old team so well. I mean, the Grizzlies, ever since they've gotten good near the beginning of last decade, they've
Yeah.
had that identity. You had the grit and grind era, and
Yep.
this is so similar to it. Obviously, a guy at the top in Morant who just has this massive personality, kind of like Tony Allen did at the top of
Yep.
that group back then. And the way that he just puts on this whole group of guys that are kind of unsung. I think people know Desmond Bane at this point, but when I follow Ja Morant on Twitter and when he's tweeting late into the night and he's shouting out all his teammates and he's putting on people the different highlights of what guys are doing around him, like that's a brand of leadership that's pretty new to the NBA, I would say, where he's just putting on this small market team that's doing an amazing job and he's got that stardom, but he's also putting all his followers on and everyone around the league to all the other amazing performances that the people around him are doing. And like you said, it's a young group, a lot of guys that have just been awesome draft picks. I know draft Twitter's in love with what Memphis has done year in and year out. And, they did tell us about Desmond Bane and what he
Yeah.
was going to
Yep.
become there. Like the
Yep.
Celtics take him 30th. I tried to get in with Taylor Jenkins on the call last night and kind of see what happened there because I feel like the story still hasn't been told about exactly how that went down. I know
Yeah.
it was a salary dump on Boston's end, and the pick ended up going out there. But was that like a thing where Boston was interested in him and they ended up sending him over? Or was that pick already in Memphis's hand and that was pretty much their selection? I still haven't heard definitively either way, but he has just turned out to not only be an amazing shooter, which I think people knew coming in, but he's been an all-around great player. And like you talked about there, he kind of carried them through that stretch when Morant was out and Tyus Jones was filling in a point.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's it's a team full of guys that have really just accelerated their games. Taking those jumps. I feel like usually every year, young players are inconsistent in the NBA for the most part. You have the exceptions, but for the most part. But a lot of these guys are taking the jump at the same time. DeAnthony Melton coming off the bench with his jump. Desmond Bane, I mean, he's been one of the more consistent shooters in the NBA, and now he's doing things off of the dribble. I just mentioned Tyus Jones, but Brandon Clark off of the bench. I feel like Brandon Clark could start for a lot of NBA teams. He's very efficient as a scorer. He does a lot of his work in the paint, kind of like to the Grizzlies moniker. And he's one of those guys who gets a lot of offensive boards, which is another thing the Grizzlies are top in the NBA in as well. And I mean, those are the guys who, everyone knows about Ja Morant. And like you said, more people are catching on to Desmond Bane. And I think even Jaren Jackson defensively, what he's doing this year is starting to garner more attention. But those guys are what makes this team go from that 8 seed team that we've seen in the past to now you have this team that's, positioning itself possibly for a top 2, top 3 seed. And it's a lot of pieces, but Desmond Bane has been a big part of that. I mean, we saw in that fourth quarter yesterday against Boston, he finally got his shot going, but he had struggled for about 3 games, pretty much since coming out of the All-Star break. Shot 4 of 19 from 3 coming into this game, coming out of the All-Star break. And in that game, I believe he started 1 of 6 from 3, but he finished 5 of 10. So that fourth quarter, he got going. But that's just a glimpse of what Desmond Bane brings to the table.
Yeah, and obviously Jaren Jackson can defend like crazy inside.
Yeah.
The blocks he puts up game in and game out are pretty impressive there. I'm still waiting for him to put it all together as a player, but I have more hope for him than I did coming in. And like you talked about, he had the injuries there for a while. I found it interesting last night you tweeted about Steven Adams being second best player on the Grizzlies in February, looking back on it.
Yeah.
And I know he had an injury last night and wasn't exactly himself. But that trade, it's amazing to me how big of an impact that trade, which just kind of looked like a salary dump and a pick flipping both ways, how big of an impact that had on both groups. Because I think New Orleans comes away with it happy, getting Jonas Valanciunas, who's just been awesome for them, really reshaped their offense and given them a new dynamic with a big presence inside. And on the Memphis end, you look at the starting lineup, you got Adams and you got Zaire Williams, who was the pick that they got from New Orleans there in that deal. And that's 2 of your 5 starters right there. And Adams has just been this amazing chemistry guy for them. Obviously a big interior presence who can get a double-double each game. And I still look back at him carrying Tony Bradley away from that scrap.
I can't hear you.
You got me? You got me? We'll see if our commenters got me here. Me? Everyone got me in the chat here? Nothing? Everyone got me in the chat here? Let's see. If it's me or if it's him. All right, everyone's got me in the chat. Jump out and jump back in. I'm going to give him a shout here and see if we can get him going again here. Oh, here we go. All right, we're going to grab him on the phone. We're working through it here, people. Here he is.
There we go.
Got me in the chat here. Keep the momentum going. It's me or if it's him.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I got you now. All right, everyone's got me in the chat. Jump out and jump back in. I'm going to give him a shout here and see if we can get him going again here. Oh, here we go. All right, we're going to grab him on the phone. I got you. I got some echo coming back in.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. Sorry about that. I don't know. I think the sound just went out while you were talking there. So, but
Yeah,
yeah,
so I was talking Steven Adams, that trade,
yeah,
and the impact it had for both sides. Jonas going on to New Orleans and being a three-point shooter and an interior presence for them. Adams, and then Zaire Williams, 2 of your 5 starters there. If you're Memphis, coming from that deal, which just kind of looked like a salary dump. Eric Bledsoe coming
mm-hmm.
over and getting flipped again there, but it ended up being, I don't want to say like a transformative trade for the Grizzlies, but definitely one that boosted the locker room and gave them both a young guy that's fit in right away here with the starters for 22 straight games, and
Yep.
Adams, who's been a double-double some nights, and then when he's not on other nights, he's carrying Tony Bradley out of a scrap there, and one of the great highlights of this year.
Yeah, I mean, man, winning on the margins, I think that's what separates the good drafting teams to the great drafting teams. I talked about the Celtics earlier. I mean, they've done it for a while. With guys, like Terry Rozier wasn't a top 10 pick, but he was, just a big part of those teams and guys like that. But I mean, Robert Williams, for example, late first round pick, and he's
It
a
is
starter.
amazing. Yeah, like you pretty much put the pieces, and I think
Yeah,
a lot of people wish Rozier was still here, but it went
yep,
Smart, Rozier, Brown, Tatum, Williams in
yep.
5 straight drafts.
Yep, exactly. So you win, you win in those little small marginal pieces. Like you don't always have to you don't have to be some super scout to hit on a top 5 pick.
Yep.
But when you get those guys, the Brandon Clarks of the world, and like what they did with Steven Adams and Jonas Valanciunas. I mean, here's the thing with Steven Adams, we see, from a national perspective, he's known as one of those dirty work guys.
He's the
But
coolest guy in the NBA. That's what I'll
oh
call him.
yeah, he's definitely he's a great guy. He's hilarious. But what he's done for this team, I mean, for one, Steven Adams at 28 years old is the oldest guy on this team. That should tell you a lot about just the youthfulness of this bunch. But for example, Ja Morant, and I wrote a story about Ja Morant's paint production this season. It's historical. He's leading the NBA in paint points as a point guard. Hasn't been done in the last 25 years. And Steven Adams is a big part of that. I don't know if we saw it yesterday as much, with the ankle injury, and we don't know how effective he was after that point. But one thing that they usually do in games is Steven Adams will do something where he like sets a screen, and once he sets the screen, Ja Morant puts the guard on his back. We see a lot of guys do that when they set the screen. They get the guard behind them, put the guard on his back. But Steven Adams rolls to the rim while Ja Morant is going to the rim, and he kind of shields the big man, which is a lot of times giving Ja Morant a wide open layup, or is forcing another defender to come down and kick it to Zaire Williams or Desmond Bane for wide open 3-pointer every single time. So it's those little things. That was a tip from Steven Adams. Steven Adams came, in the summer. He told Ja Morant, hey, let's work on this. And now Ja Morant leads the NBA in paint scoring. His screen setting, best screen assist in the league, and all that is a big part. But I mean, his passing, he threw some passes yesterday as well. But he's averaging 3.3 assists a game, career high for him. We just touched on the rebounding. He's a monster on the board, number 1 offensive rebounder in the NBA, and he's a big reason. Every stat where you see the Grizzlies are near the top of the NBA or at the top of the NBA, you can point to Steven Adams somehow having an impact on that, whether it's rebounding and the offensive rebounding, whether it's the blocks, whether it's the fast break points. I mean, we saw him launch a pass 90 feet, to Ja Morant for one of the craziest plays I've ever seen. And he's done that a couple times this year, just not on an out of bounds play
That's
like that.
right. He threw that inbounds. That was the play of the year, I think.
Yeah,
That was unreal off the
yeah.
full court inbounds, and that's
We
a
might
skill.
not. Yeah, we might not. I said that, man. I don't know if they could pull that off right now if they were just at practice and tried it 10 times. Like that's one of those type
That's
plays.
just one assist in the stat sheet, but you got to get that one and hang it up and put a plaque on it. Like
Yep.
it is one of the best assists you'll see ever. And this team, they can really get out and fly. I think the highlight last night, obviously, was the left-handed
Yeah.
slam that
Yep.
Ja threw down. And I was at a weird angle up above on like the 9th floor. I could just see how it was coming together from that left side where Morant was rising there, and I think Anderson threw the pass. And Smart was playing back on Morant, and this is, for me and for everyone in Boston who hasn't really seen Ja playing at this level, Smart was hedging on him. He got a good jump up on the pass, but Morant just kept rising and rising above him. And the crowd was just like, wow, like, what else is this guy going to do here? And then you had to play a few plays later where he caught it wide open on the break, and it was almost like he was looking at what he was going to do next there and drop the ball out of bounds. It was a weird night for him. He still had his moments. It was the quietest 38 I've ever seen, especially after not making a bucket in the first quarter there. But this guy, he's going to become one of those players that every city he goes to now is going to be piling up in the stands, waiting extra long pregame. He had an interesting thing pregame too. I don't know if it's something he does every game where he was like whipping the ball around with the coaches playing like
the
dodgeball. That was so weird to me. So he does that every game.
Yeah, that's a every game thing. He's fun in the pregame, and just something you mentioned. I know you've mentioned the Boston crowd giving him kind of like a little ovation or a louder applause than normal guys when they come into there. That's sort of becoming a theme this year. He got MVP chance in Orlando. He got MVP chance in Brooklyn, and even bigger than those two places to me. I went to Philly and New York. Two of the wildest fan bases in the sport, up there probably with you guys and a couple more teams. But in Philly, he put on a show, and they were oohing and ahhing, and in New York, all the other players were getting announced. It was really quiet. And Ja Morant, it kind of got loud, and he got a nice applause there. And I mean, he's really he's becoming a national phenomenon, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And you've written about him, the shoes. Nice piece last week in Commercial Appear about how he accidentally gave away a pair of custom shoes. He was just out there giving the jersey away, giving everything away. I see Tatum doing this now too. And it really is like the headbands flying and the wristband and the jersey, and like everything's just flying off these guys in the final minutes of games. And he accidentally gave away shoes, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I tried to put myself in that moment because you just scored 52 points, and I mean, the crowd was wild that day. I mean, when he had about 42, 44, everyone was counting down. I think when he had 44, everyone wanted him to take the shots. The Grizzlies wanted him to take the shots. The fans wanted him to take the shots. And I think only one person shot during that stretch. It was like DeAnthony Melton, a three-pointer, and the crowd let out like, because, they wanted Morant. But putting all of that together, then he got the 50, the 52. They got the win. Everyone's coming up to him and all that. Like, your mind is in a daze. And, he gives away his sleeve, and, he takes his jersey off, gives it to his childhood friend who before the season said, when you have that first 50-point game, I want the jersey. So he honored that word, gave it to the childhood friend that he's known since he was 7 years old. And then he gave away the sneaks. And they were custom Kobe 6s. Kobe's in general, Nike doesn't make Kobe's anymore.
Yeah.
So
the deal expired, right? Ooh, we just lost him again. We're gonna keep plowing ahead here, people. We got this. A couple interruptions in the show. We're gonna pull him right back in here and just keep it firing. Here we go.
There we go. We good?
Yep, we're good. So no more Kobe's. The deal expired, right? That was it.
So the deal expired. I think it'll be a year next month. But so Ja Morant, custom Kobe 6s. He got them made by an artist named Serato, who Corey Bailey, very popular sneaker customizer on YouTube, has done. Jamal Murray, James Harden, a lot of the NBA stars, he's customized their sneaks. He's done Tom Holland for Spider-Man. He's done Jake Paul for his boxing matches, etc.
Oh God.
You're right. But yeah, so Ja got those sneakers, and those were a one of one. And not only were they a one of one, they were worn one time.
Like a piece of art, yeah.
They were worn one time in a 52-point game, and Ja, he was in a daze, and he's giving away shoes, like a lot of the stars, plenty of times. And then after the game, the next morning at shoot around, he has on another custom pair that he got done by Serato, and we're just talking about him, and he's like, Yeah, man, I'm kind of sick. I gave the ones away from yesterday, because things were happening so fast, and I feel like it was one of those things where he was like, I really just gave those away, but they were gone.
Who got
But
the shoes? So the
it was
friend got the jersey.
yep, the
Did someone
friend
else
got.
get the shoes?
Yeah, no, he didn't even know who got the shoes. It was just,
Wow.
he gave them away to some fans. But people were saying, well, you can kind of go, try to find it and do the trade-off thing. But he was like, nah, it's all good. Like they got him. He just was like, man, somebody has a special pair of shoes, which they do. I hope that fan realizes how special those shoes are.
So what's the next step for this team? Yeah, they're gonna have expectations now, obviously, given off how they finished here. But there's a little bit of gravy too, I'd say, in terms of
Yep.
how far they go here. It's gonna depend on how it wraps up. But there's certainly a team that could be in the mix in the West. I know Skip Bayless, I think, put out yesterday that there's a championship pick. I don't know, like I could actually see both of these teams in the finals this year if
Mm,
things go a certain way, which would be
mm.
fun. I actually look ahead a couple of years from now. Almost feels inevitable that Memphis is going to end up in the East if they do this expansion thing here,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
there's always been a conversation just because of how weird it is Memphis's travel schedule against the West there when they're so far east. I think that would make a lot of sense. I'd love it. Get to see
Right.
the Grizzlies more often each year. But this is our like dome theory thought of the day, an NBA Finals matchup here. Now, the bottom of the West, you might end up with the Lakers. You might end up with a more fully loaded Clippers team than we've seen all year, depending on how things break here. So nothing's going to be easy this postseason in terms of just how deep the league is here. But this group looks like it has the defense and certainly the offense on the nights when they're on to make a real deep run here. So what are kind of your expectations for this group as we get pretty close to the stretch run here?
Man, it's kind of a wild card thing. I mean, you just touched on all the good points. And I think for me, it's really a kind of like a luck of the draw type thing in the Western Conference because someone is, as you mentioned, probably gonna end up with the Clippers with Paul George back for sure, and who knows, maybe a Kawhi, like 20-minute per game Kawhi or something. I mean, I don't know, but they're gonna end up with at least Paul George back.
Yeah.
Someone is gonna get a Nuggets team right now, whereas they're the sixth seed and the Grizzlies are three. The Grizzlies would draw the Nuggets in the first round
Memphis, Denver. Wow, that would be a
with Jamal
grind.
Murray and Michael Porter. That's a normal top three seed in the Western Conference in most years. So you'd get them in that situation. That's not an ideal, normal first round matchup. And
Minnesota's been really good.
Minnesota has been really good. I'm not for one to count LeBron James out in a playoff game where he'll be playing 41, 42 minutes as opposed to, the regular season stuff.
They're the ones you would want though out of all those
Oh,
teams,
for
which is
sure.
funny.
For sure. I agree. But the West is so tough, man. I think for me personally, I think second round is a very achievable goal. Um, but it's tough. Like I think first round you're looking at right now, the Grizzlies are the three. They're half a game behind the Warriors. They could possibly get up to the two line, which will be a big difference in my opinion. Because at the three, you're playing either the Mavs or the Nuggets. I mean, the Mavs just beat the Warriors twice, and they're playing really good basketball. And the Nuggets, like I just said, they're going to get Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. back, and that's not going to be the record of the Nuggets this season. Is no indication of what that team will look like in the playoffs, probably. So you're either going to have to play one of those two teams, which will be a slugfest. And if you're the three, you probably get the Warriors as a two in the next round. Or if you're a two, you get the Warriors as a three, and they'll have Draymond back probably. And, the starters, Steph Curry, those guys will be playing a lot more minutes. Those are tough matchups, man. And the Grizzlies actually have fared as well as anyone against Golden State, the past couple years. They beat them in the play-in last season. They beat them a couple times this year. But I mean, I see second round. Western Conference Finals is for sure a possibility. Like, don't get me wrong, because the Grizzlies have been playing as good as anybody since Christmas. But it's just when you talk about the issues of the Grizzlies, I think half court offense, as we saw when the Celtics took away, those transition opportunities that they usually just kill teams on, it forced the Grizzlies into more half court offense. And usually in the half court with the Grizzlies, it's Ja Morant making something happen for everyone else. And if you can minimize the impact of all those other players, which the Celtics did, which a lot of other teams will try to do in the playoffs, um, you can beat them. And I think just the way the Grizzlies play, depending on a lot of fast break chances and points in the paint, it's really hard to win that way. I did a story recently as well about the Grizzlies shoot numbers. They're in the bottom third of the NBA in 3-point shooting and free throw shooting.
The
Only
shooting was
one,
bad last night.
yeah, exactly. And only one franchise in the West has won championships with comparable shooting numbers, and that's the Lakers. They did it in 2020 when they had LeBron, AD, Danny Green, Caruso, those guys. And they did it, in I believe it was 01, 04 when they lost in the finals, but they did it in 01 and 02. And that was mainly because they had Shaq. Like, all that was Shaq getting hacked a lot, and his free throw numbers kind of like sink into groups. But yeah, those are the only teams that have had comparable numbers out the West that have won it. So winning the West is really tough for me this year. I mean, when you talk about a couple years and stuff like that, I can see it without a doubt because they're gonna get more shooting. Zaire Williams is a rookie this year. I think he's gonna be really good. There's potential for more, but this year, I mean, I think just getting farther than last year, get a good second round series against the Warriors, 7 games, that'll earn you your respect to me.
For sure. And staying out of that Phoenix bracket is helpful for them
Yeah,
because Golden State, we'll see what happens with Green. That's really scary for them. I know they
yeah,
lost again last night. They do not look like themselves without him.
at all. Yeah,
Curry's struggle-filled year, which is amazing after he was like that inevitable MVP to begin the year, first quarter there, has been weird to watch. And then the Jazz are kind of floating around there. That's obviously a team that gave
yeah,
Grizzlies trouble last year. I'm terrified of Dallas. What they're doing lately with Luke at the top. It's gonna be crazy out there, and like all those returns at the bottom, Denver getting Murray, like you talked about, Clippers getting
man.
George, just completely reshapes the bottom of the conference. I feel the same way about Boston. We talk about the similarities between these two groups.
Yep.
We'll talk about them for a minute before we get out of here. They're on the bottom half of the conference, obviously because of that horrible start that they got off to. So they could rise up to the top here, but it's almost advantageous if you're Boston to stay where you are right now in a 4-5 matchup with it could be Milwaukee, could be Chicago. Like they're gonna have a daunting first round series no matter how you look at it here. But if you're up at the top of the East, you might end up with a Brooklyn team with KD and Kyrie fully available.
Man.
Toronto's been a menace all year, so it's not easy down at the bottom of the East either. And you're almost better off staying out of that line up with the 1 seed. I mean, the East is just so much better this year, so there's no real avoiding anything out there. But you're not in a terrible spot if you're Boston, or a much worse spot than Miami is as the 1 seed
Right,
if
right.
you're right there. But overall, your impressions of Boston after just another lockdown defensive night for that group. Like what they're doing right now, just piling up those stops to start games. They're doing that every single game. You obviously saw
Yeah.
them hold Morant to 0-6 in that first quarter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, so the Grizzlies have been the top first quarter scoring team in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
They actually entered this game. It's one of those, I think, those local stats. But I don't know if the Boston people know that the Grizzlies had 13 consecutive games with 30 or more points in the first quarter. Boston held them to 20. I mean, that in itself, like, it's not like they got 26 or 28 and it was close. They held them to 20 points. That's the second lowest first quarter for the Grizzlies this season. So that in itself was just very unusual. And that was, a lot of credit to Boston. There were some people saying, oh, the Grizzlies were missing shots, which they were. But Boston's defense, is really good. I like Boston. I think, as you just mentioned, the East is just so tough. It's just one of those years. I mean, the 6th seed could go to the finals, or you just never know. I mean, what, Brooklyn is 8 right now. I mean, a 1-8 matchup. I mean, I know the Heat beat them yesterday, but who knows in a 7-game series how that will play out, especially with Kyrie currently being able to play 4 away games, which kind of tilts in their favor a little bit more. But yeah, I like Boston. I like the guards. I mean, Derek White was a big pickup in my opinion. I'm big on having guards who can pressure the ball and take you out of an offense. I think all of the championship teams we've seen in recent years have had that. Whether it was Fred VanVleet for the Raptors a couple years ago, whether last year we saw Drew Holiday take Chris Paul out of the offense to the point where the Suns started having other guys bring the ball up in the finals, which just completely rigged up their offense. Even before that, we saw like Klay Thompson picking up full court, picking up half court, taking teams out of their offense during Golden State's run, and things like that. You need that guy. Boston has it. Boston has a couple of them.
Two, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
unusual.
It's very unusual, and I think that's an advantage. Uh, I think with those guards, you're in any game because you're gonna mess up a team offensively, and a team is gonna have to beat Boston on talent. I don't think a team is gonna beat them from a scheme perspective, and that's why I think it was hard for the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies are more about execution. Execution. A team like the Nets, for example, when you take them out of their offense, they can just say, "Fine, here, KD," and just throw Kevin Durant the ball. And it's just skill against skill. It's who cares about what type of defense you're playing or things like that. It's gonna have to be someone like that, I think, that can really give Boston trouble because at the end of the day, they're not letting you get into whatever you want to run. And if you do get into it, I mean, they're switching everything, so they're stalling you out. Which the Grizzlies, that was a big problem for the Grizzlies. I mean, uh, Boston switched 1 through 4 and just stalled out any type of action they tried to get into, and they have the guys to be able to do that, and that's unique. I like Boston. It's again, like I said, the Grizzlies in the West. It's a matchup thing, for me. Who knows? Like if you draw the Nets in the first round, if they get hot with KD or something, you get like a 4 or 5 matchup. I don't like that matchup because, like I said, that's a team where they have a couple players in KD and Kyrie. They can just say, you know what, you're taking us out of our offense. Let's just, scratch that and let
Bulls
these.
have a little bit of that too with
Yep, and I was gonna
DeRozan.
and that's where I was going next. I was thinking maybe the Bulls because Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, those guys in that same manner. But a team like the Heat, the Heat gave it to Boston a couple of years ago, and I don't think I've seen Jayson Tatum talk about how he felt like they should have won that series, and how that series hurt them. I think they could give the Heat a really good run with the way they're playing right now. But they're in that conversation for sure.
Let's talk about Tatum because he's gonna have to be the one if they do get into a series like that where Durant's giving it to them and
Yep.
DeRozan's doing some amazing stuff. And DeRozan really has cracked open their defense a couple times this year. Well, blew a big fourth quarter lead early in the year, and then I think they took the second one late. But a couple guys were missing for Chicago as they have been this year. Philly looks daunting. You definitely get two
Man,
guys there that could really
exactly.
explode in
Same thing.
isolation.
Yep.
So there's some matchups there. So it's gonna come down to something I've been keen on our post-game show and other locations here is Brown and Tatum reaching a next level. And Tatum looks like he's getting there, especially with the passing that we saw on display last night and against Atlanta on Tuesday. Brown's still trying to find his way, it feels like, figure out like where he fits in with all they're doing right now offensively because Tatum has the ball a lot. White's obviously getting involved in that, and Smart is really taking on the point guard role this year and made it his own. So I feel good about where Tatum's going in terms of him being able to really be a force come playoff time. Brown is sort of that X factor. If he's that second guy gunning it and scoring 20, 30, they're going to be tough to stop on the offensive end too, which is where you really start talking about championship potential because you need like that top tier defense, which they obviously have. And then you definitely need like a top 10 offense, I'd say, to win a championship. And they're sort of scrapping it together right now. But if Brown and Tatum score like they can and really find themselves as a duo, that's when you start talking about the Celtics as a championship team. So I don't know where you kind of see Brown and Tatum being at in terms of being able to carry a team like that.
Yeah. I like them. When you talk about duos in the East, they're in that top tier. I wouldn't put them at the very top. I like uh I with the Bulls, I say DeRozan and whoever has it because they have, a lot of times it'll be Zach LaVine, but Vucevic has his nights. Lonzo Ball, when they get him back, I mean, Lonzo Ball was really good earlier this season. I don't think of people really just remember that. But you know, the Bulls, James Harden and Embiid, you know, that's a given most nights. But that's a matchup I really want to see Celtics Bulls being, because you know the Celtics have the guards who can, you know, cause a little trouble for James Harden. I mean, it's those type of guards historically who can, you know, take away and crowd his space
And they
without
beat Philly
fouling.
by 50 last
Yep.
time they played them.
Yeah, they bust the scoreboard on them, as we say. So yeah, those are a couple teams, but as a duo, Tatum and Brown, I mean, they're in that tier where you feel like, you know, when a team's taking you out of your offense and it's not working, you can go to those guys. You can go to Tatum, you can go to Brown, and they can get you some baskets. I think the key for them actually is a little bit different, because you talked about Tatum's passing, and you would know more about it than me. But I remember, you know, earlier in the season when
They were getting called out on their passing, right? I think that's where he's going with that there, and that's been obviously the emphasis. The whole thing for Ime Udoka has been getting these guys going as passers, and probably is going to come down to other guys hitting shots. Grant Williams, who's been on fire from three, 3 of 3 against Memphis, 2 of 4 against Atlanta on Tuesday, I believe it is. Horford getting going, 34, 35% from three. Those are going to be the keys there. I think that's where you're going, right, Damichael, in terms of the passing?
yeah, the passing with Brown and Tatum, I think keeping those guys involved, you know, keeping Marcus Smart, Derek White, and you know, the rest of that group involved offensively, Al Horford and those guys. I mean, I'm sure Al Horford, I mean, he's a vet, he probably doesn't care as much as the other guys, but keeping those guys just involved is important. I mean, we seen Golden State, I think, is the model example in terms of, you knew Steph Curry and KD were the guys, and Clay, but every playoff series, we saw one of those other guys have a really big game for a lot of their runs. And you know, I think last year that was the same case with the Bucks, and that was the same case with the Suns. You knew it was Chris Paul and Devin Booker, but Mikal Bridges had some games, and you know,
Mm.
Cam Johnson, DeAndre Ayton. I mean, that's how the playoffs work. And Kyrie and Kevin Durant are going to carry that team, but you know, Ben Simmons was going to have a game, or Patty Mills, or if you go over to Philly, you know, Tyrese Maxey is going to have his game. Tobias Harris. It's who's going to be that guys for Boston, and will Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown allow them to be, because at the end of the day, they're not going to be able to just average 30 a piece and, you know, carry a team to the finals. You know, I feel like you're gonna need, you know, Derek White or Marcus Smart, or you know, some of those guys to really step up and really bring something. And that's the key, I think, in terms of for that. But as far as them as a tandem, I mean, they're in that conversation for sure.
Yeah, and it's like the Tatum and the Brown connection specifically that's gonna be key, because
Yeah,
Tatum's gonna have to be the one setting Brown up, and they've gotten better at that this year. They were in a bad place with that early, and that was one of the things Ime caught on and was like, "These guys gotta learn how to play together," and a lot of people were talking about that. Can they play together? Do they need to be
yeah.
broken up? And it's looked a
Trust
lot
me, they
better.
heard it in Memphis. They heard it in
Mhm.
Memphis.
I know, this was the spot. They were like, if anyone's gonna jump on Brown, maybe it'd be Memphis there, and I certainly threw some trades around in my own mind there, but luckily, we're past that. Looks like these 2 guys can coexist here and make things happen, and they're doing it a different way, certainly. I don't think Brown and Tatum, when they entered the league, ever imagined they'd be this grinded out, uh, steal every possession from opposing teams, run on the break, but they've embraced it, and I think they're having a lot of fun, because when you start losing like they have the last 2 years, if anything works to get the wins flowing again, they're going to embrace it, and they have. And it's a feel good group right now. Seeing Al Horford back doing what he did last night was amazing. I
Yeah,
love the fact that they got him back this season, and he's certainly been a
man,
veteran
he
piece.
looked good. He looked
Yeah,
real good.
pretty comparable, I think, what Adams is bringing to Memphis this year. They're both in later stages of their careers, not quite the same guys, but they're making it work, and they're having a subtle impact, doing little things that are just
Mhm.
making a big impact. And what you said about like trusting other guys, letting them touch the ball, letting them get their shots up, that's certainly what Tatum's been doing with Horford, because he has
Mhm.
struggled to shoot probably right up until this week all year. And then he had a big breakout game against Memphis when they really need him to. So we'll be hoping. We'll definitely see these two teams play again. I think it's the last
Yep.
game of the year that these
Yep.
two are going to meet in. So we'll see them in Memphis. Damichael will get a closer look at them out there covering the Grizzlies with commercial appeal. Check him out soon on Locked On Grizzlies. Have you dropped that episode yet?
First one's gonna be Monday.
Perfect.
So yeah, we'll start up Monday.
All right. I want to get a little bit of your journey too before we get out of here. Usually we dive a
Sure.
little deeper, but we did quite a bit on the Grizzlies and Celtics here. You went to
Yeah.
Tennessee, Memphis native, spent some time in Philly, and now you're back just a couple of years out of school covering the Grizzlies here, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, man. It's happened pretty fast. You know, I try to reflect on it every now and then. But yeah, as you said, I was born and raised in Memphis. It's pretty much all I ever knew for 18 years. You know, I'd actually, when I got my first internship to leave Memphis, which was Sports Illustrated, after I graduated from the University of Tennessee, I went to New York City, and that was my first time ever leaving the South. I never been, you know, on the East Coast, out west.
What was that like?
It was different. You know, it was a lot of adjustments. Just, I mean, the smallest of things. Just the traffic, how combust it is up there. The food options, how much food they give you. You know, it's something as simple as that. If you order a sandwich or a hot dog with stuff on, how much they give you compared to how sloppy and big it is in the South. And you know, it's just like little small differences, and then of course, you know, the cultural things in terms of how people talk, how people consume things, and all of that, how people get around, learning all, you know, all these you know, subways and trolleys and trains and all of that. It was all interesting. But yeah, I went to New York City for 9 weeks. It was a great experience, and straight from there, I got the opportunity at the Philadelphia Inquirer, where I started off as a fellow, and a year in, they extended my fellowship and then boosted me to full time, where I became the sports culture reporter there, and I believe that was actually summer of 2021. So I was only 4 or 5 months into that role, where I focused on a lot of you know, life, sports, intersecting stories. So I did some things, you know, on some guys with the Sixers, did some things with the Eagles players, and you know, I did some things with the Phillies. So it was more of a role where I would go in between the sports and try to get some of those stories. I did a lot of things on like fashion, culture, sneakers, etc. Almost like the, you know, the Ja Morant sneaker story. I did a lot of that in Philly. So this opportunity came up, and you know, it was a chance to become an NBA beat writer for one, and it was an opportunity to come back home for the first time for me, actually, in 6 years, since I was 18. You know, I went to school in Knoxville, which is in Tennessee, but it's 6 hours away. It's the whole other side of the state. So, you know, it was the opportunity to come back home, be around family, but more than anything, it was, you know, the chance to be an NBA beat writer on a team that was actually trending upwards. And at the time when I verbally agreed to take the job, I believe they were 9-10. So when the day I agreed to take the job, I think the next day, Ja Morant got that injury, and it was like,
And that
oh
was a scary
snap.
one.
Yeah, I didn't know what it was. I was like, oh man, I just took that job. You know, Ja Morant's gonna be out. So, but you know, he came back and they were good. You know, they were 12. I mean, 10-2 when he was out. I think they're 12-2 this season without him overall. But but yeah, that's pretty much my journey, man. It's happened pretty fast, but you know, we just stuck to the grind, and just, you know, and just been appreciative of all the opportunities. Sports Illustrated was great for me in terms of a networking perspective, getting to know people. Even before Sports Illustrated, I got the Sports Illustrated opportunity through SJI, which is the Sports Journalism Institute. That was I think my big break internship, because that internship in my class, it was 14 of the top minority journalists in the country. So it gave us an opportunity to, you know, to get, you know, internships at a place like Commercial Appeal, USA Today. Other interns went to like MLB.com. My internship took me to Sports Illustrated, where I got that opportunity. Put out some good enough work where the Philly Inquirer was interested in getting me as a fellow, which led to my time in Memphis. So they all played off of each other, man. But it's been a fun journey for sure.
I'm trying to do the math in my head. Were you at Tennessee when Grant was there?
Oh yeah. We haven't talked. I'm surprised we haven't talked about that. Okay, so here's my Grant Williams.
Here we
So
go. This is
so
gonna be good.
I got to, let's see, my junior year was Grant Williams. I want to say sophomore year.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, he was a sophomore that year, and that was the team that was picked 13th in the SEC and ended up winning the regular season championship. And then the next year, they came back and they were, it was his last year, and they were really good. But Grant Williams was interesting, man. He wasn't your typical on campus, big star basketball player who's walking around, sucking up all of the love. He was, I mean, you guys know it down. Grant Williams was just like a nerd.
Yeah.
I remember one time, and a lot of the basketball players are pretty casual, but Grant Williams was the most casual guy. He was on campus. There's nothing flary about Grant Williams. He wears sweatpants around, and he's not trying to be the freshest guy walking around or anything. And I'm at a red light, and I see him walking towards the Tennessee, basketball arena, Thompson Bowling Arena, and he's looking at me, and like I look at him, but I'm like, oh, he's walking to practice. I'm not gonna bother him. So I look the other way. Then I check back to look again to see if he's still looking, and then he looks and he just does like this awkward wave. And so I see him at practice later, and I was like, well, I wasn't trying to bother you because you're going to practice. Plus, I was at a red light. And he said the whole time he was just trying to figure out if that was really me or not. And so Grant Williams is an interesting guy, man. Of course, you guys know about him in the board games, and I think at UT that was one of our favorite things. I believe it was Canaan. Was that the name of it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kana, or whatever, however you pronounce it. Yeah.
Yeah. He loved that game, and it was, the funniest part was just seeing how the rest of the guys, none of those guys were like Grant Williams, by the way. Admiral Schofield, Jordan Bone, Lamonte Turner, James Daniels, none of those guys were like, persona-wise like Grant Williams. Grant Williams was kind of the oddball, but he was so, he was the guy. He was the star player. He was first team.
That is too funny. One more time. We'll get him back in here. There we go.
We're good?
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, I was just saying that, he was the oddball out of the group. And they were a fun team. They danced a lot. They were real charismatic. But everyone loved Grant Williams for him. His teammates, anytime he made a play, if he fell down, 4 teammates were running to pick him up. He was that type of guy. And I always felt, he'd have a good role in the NBA, but seeing how he's just like, really toned in on his game, and he's been money, on those
The
3-pointers.
shooting. You never saw that, huh?
Man, you saw him take a lot of mid-range jumpers, but it was very rare that he was money from the mid-range then, but you didn't see it happening like this. Like, he's a guy now, he's open. I mean, I've seen a couple games where he hasn't missed. So like it's kind of fun to see, but yeah, he deserves it, man. Grant Williams was like such a great guy. He was never, UT is such a big school and it's a big campus, and you can get kind of sucked up into that, as the basketball star and things like that. But I mean, he was just so casual around there. He was just casually walk around, wave at everyone when they say hi, take pictures with people on the way to class. And I think I even took a class with him, and he was just like, he was just there, like real cool guy.
Yeah, no, and he doesn't look like a star basketball player either.
Not at
Like the
all.
short
Yeah.
stature there, a little beefy, I think, coming into the league too. And he ended up shedding some of that weight last summer. Man, they gave it to him in the chat because he had a rough year last year, and wasn't really in the rotation. Everyone was like, "Oh, Grant." He was like the easiest guy to dump on, and
Yeah, yeah,
now he's coming out this year, and just everyone's like, "Oh my God, Grant! Like, how did this happen?" Because he's hitting
yeah.
every three he takes. He's making great passes. He's getting downhill a little bit. Like, he's become a player that is almost indispensable for this team. I said, like, just a phenomenal bench player when you think about the different things that he does there. And he was pretty good as a rookie too. He's sort of playing some small ball five for them in that bubble. And, I think people were disappointed that they didn't get Clark, who was right around there, and they traded the Thibault pick to get him. But now you look at some of those guys, and it's almost like Grant's a better player than both of them. And three-point shooting in this league, it's so valuable. But you talk about the personality too. Like, he just feels like a rock in that room, gluing
Hmm.
everybody together, talking a ton, communicating. And he's a great interview too. Like, every time
Oh
he's on
yeah,
the podium, it's like, wow,
yeah,
but thank God he's here because he's gonna say some good stuff. And he
yeah.
loves it. He's one of those guys who just love, like, he's like, "Extra question. Who anyone else? Anyone else got one?"
Yeah,
'Cause
he's
not
very
everybody's
well
like
spoken.
that.
Yeah, right, right. I mean, like I said, he's casual. Like he's like one of those guys where you feel like he just appreciates all of this. It's not getting old to him. Where a lot of guys you see that happen. I mean, he was a guy from small school in North Carolina, and he comes to UT where it's 28,000 people, and Thompson Bowling Arena fills up what 20,000 I think or so, and freshman year he has a really good year, but the team was bad, and then they were projected to be bad again, and they just take off. But even then, his junior year, it's just ho hum business. Like he's still the same guy. You couldn't have tell by his junior year or his freshman year, like, oh, he's the big guy on campus now, or oh, it's just Grant Williams, the guy, the 3-star from Carolina. You wouldn't have been able to tell just by the way he walks around campus.
Yeah, I remember talking to Steven Silas before they playing the Rockets, and it
Yeah.
almost felt weird to ask. I was like, "Are you guys keying in on Grant a little bit more for this game?" And he was like, "Yeah, we're really keying in on Grant." And I actually didn't know that they knew each other from Carolina. And
Yep.
Silas used to go to his practices and stuff, and
Hmm.
he was almost shocked by the kind of player he became because it's so different from Tennessee and certainly from high school what he's doing now in this league. And pretty big credit to him. You got to change your game sometimes to make it in the league, and he certainly has. So Grant will be a staple on this team for many years to come, it looks like here. And that was looking like a shaky draft for Boston after a bunch of good ones, like we opened
Yeah.
the
Right.
talking about. But now he's another guy that they hit on. Probably Danny's last great pick, looking at how the one after that went. But Pritchard looks good too. So we'll give Danny his credit. I know he's gotten a lot of flack too, heading out the door in Boston, and Brad obviously now is going to be making picks for a while with all the picks he's sending out. So Damichael Cole, great conversation here. Great to meet you today, and I think everybody will send them over to your work at Damichael DamichaelC on Twitter. Damichael C. Go follow him there and check out his work in the Commercial Appeal. New Locked On Grizzlies coming Monday for his first appearance on there. So check that out. And of course, get Dome Theory wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, anywhere, clnsmedia.com. Post game's back on Sunday, Nets Celtics, 1 o'clock. So we'll be live from the Garden around 3:30. And we'll see the Grizzlies again to end this season. That
Yep.
game will be coming up quick. So Damichael, great having you here. Thanks again.
Likewise, my man. Appreciate you for having me. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to that last game in the season as well.